Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Baldwin. President Trump blows up Twitter, and White House staffers face the blow back. 24 tweets between Friday and Sunday. And it's not just the sheer volume that deserves attention. It's who he targets and the questions it all raises this morning that matter as well. Many of them angrily focused on the president's public battles and the investigation of his personal attorney, Michael Cohen. If Cohen is charged, will he cooperate with investigators and flip on the president? Is he setting the stage to fire independent counsel Robert Mueller? And could the president defuse a legal threat against Cohen by issuing a pardon even ahead of time? This morning, one White House aide answered to some of this.
I don't think so. I have no reason to know what it is that Michael Cohen can possibly flip on.
Well, the president said the mere fact that he said, I don't think he's going to flip.
I don't have any information as to what it possibly could flip on.
CNN's Caitlin Collins is at the White House. Caitlin, where to begin today? What a weekend it was. What are you hearing from the White House right now?
It certainly was quite a weekend, especially for our president on Twitter, who was saying he does not believe his longtime attorney, Michael Cohen, would flip on him. That language coming after the New York Times, of course, reported that the president's legal team is resigned to the fact that Michael Cohen, someone who has a wife and 2 kids, certainly could begin to cooperate with those federal officials who are investigating him. But the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, was on the North Lawn this morning, and she was asked if the president has any plans to pardon Michael Cohen should it come to that. And here's what she had to say.
Is the president open to a pardon for Michael Cohen?
I don't think that we're going to talk about hypotheticals that don't exist right now.
Now, of course, that question came because, of course, the president was tweeting this weekend about pardoning Jack Johnson, that former champion boxer who is now dead. And she was asked if the president is sending a message to Michael Cohen by tweeting something like that. And even more interestingly here, Kate, she said that phone call with Sylvester Stallone about pardoning Jack Johnson happened a month ago, which really raises the question of why was the president tweeting about it this weekend if that call happened just so long ago, Kate?
Because he was watching Rocky over the weekend. I don't know. Great to see you, Caitlin. Thank you so much. Let's talk about all this right now. Joining me, Seth Waxman. He's a defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. Jackie Kucinich is here, a CNN political analyst, and of course, Washington bureau chief for the Daily Beast. And Mark Preston is the CNN senior political analyst. Great to see you guys. Seth, first to you. On these 2 fronts, on Cohen and when it comes to Mueller, the White House is basically, they say there's nothing to see here. But that is not necessarily what you gather when you look at the president's tweets from over the weekend. How do you square it?
Well, sure. He certainly seems worried about something. So if Mr. Cohen that pressure is put on Mr. Cohen by federal prosecutors to flip, it will be a pressure cooker. And the question of whether he flips or not really goes to whether the government has, quantifiable, significant evidence against Mr. Cohen, documents, emails, other kinds of things they can put in front of Mr. Cohen to show that he is in a serious way and has serious legal troubles. But I will tell you, as a federal prosecutor myself for 13 years, I flipped dozens and dozens of people. And some of the tactics federal prosecutors use, they'll talk about the person's family, how you're going to be away from your kids for 5, 10, 15 years. The other tactics sometimes they'll use is they'll say, what if the shoe was on the other foot? If Mr. Trump was facing this kind of pressure, would he stand tall for you in exchange for, instead of flipping on you, Mr. Cohen? And inevitably, when I pose that question to almost every single person I put it to, they'd look at me and they'd say, no, that person wouldn't stand tall for me. And then they start to realize that they're out on their own limb and they got to do for themselves and their family and kind of put Mr. Trump or whoever the targets of the investigation might be secondary.
Maybe a window into why the New York Times report from over the weekend hurt so much or angered so much. Jackie, 24 tweets between Friday and Sunday. The grievance list was long. What has the president so upset, more upset than usual, if you will, this weekend?
I mean, it really does seem to be Michael Cohen and this New York Times report that you mentioned that really delved into the relationship between Michael Cohen and the president. Apparently, it was a very abusive, verbally abusive relationship. The president, again, according to this reporting, doesn't respect Cohen. It's a one-way street when it comes to that relationship. And I think it must have hit a nerve because while other world leaders were mourning the death of Barbara Bush, the president president was golfing and raging on Twitter. In addition to that, apparently this morning, the president is venting about his nominees being held up again. And the wall. The wall seems to be kind of a security blanket. The president goes back to it when he needs something else, I guess, to rage about. But it certainly points to the fact that this president isn't happy about, maybe some things he shouldn't be focusing on and right now.
Well, Mark, to Jackie's point what do you make of the timing of the president kind of unleashing these tweets just as the First Lady is representing the family at Barbara Bush's funeral? I mean, what gives here?
Well, I got to tell you, I wish I had a formula that we could put in place to try to understand why the president does things.
An algorithm, if you will. Thank you.
An algorithm and why he says things. Look, we can hypothesize, we can guess in some ways. There was that unity picture of former presidents being together. Of course, we saw that put out over the weekend. He wasn't part of it. We also saw that his nominees are under attack right now, not only from Democrats, but from Republicans. Rand Paul is not even going to vote on behalf of Mike Pompeo, who he wants to be his Secretary of State. And then the bottom line is, Kate, if you look at the situation Donald Trump is in right now, his shrinking group of advisors that he truly, truly can trust, those that would not flip on him, has shrunk to almost nil at this point. I thought Michael Cohen would probably be one of the last men standing, and I may be right on that.
Well, and Seth, a little bit, talking about Michael Cohen and a little bit what you mentioned up top, in defending Michael Cohen when we're talking about Twitter again, President Trump said that most people will flip even if it means lying or making up stories. And that's what he wrote on Twitter. One, is that your experience? Two, does that make you think that does that give you a window into what maybe the president's nervous about?
Well, yes, I think with regards to lying, that's a big concern for federal prosecutors. Cooperators are by definition criminals. And, just because someone's cooperating doesn't mean that they're going to be entirely forthcoming. One of the biggest problems is that people who cooperate minimize their conduct or continue to hold allegiances for people that they're testifying against, in this case, the president potentially. And it's the job of the federal prosecutor to weed all that out, to make sure that the cooperator is truly being 100% honest. And the best way to do that is to have corroboration, documents, emails, bank records. So when you're speaking to the audience, whether it's a jury or in this case Congress or the American people, if there were impeachment proceedings, you'd say, look, you don't have to believe Mr. Cohen because of the words coming out of his mouth only. You get to believe him because look at these documents, look at these bank records that corroborate everything Mr. Cohen says. But that is a true struggle, and the idea that a potential target like Mr. Trump is saying that someone who's cooperating against me may be forced to lie against me, I mean, that's a standard position that people that face the kind of scrutiny or the jeopardy that Mr. Trump may face, that's a tactic that's often taken.
Jackie, and this all is happening as the president set to welcome the French president tonight for his first state visit. I mean, this is just after the Allied effort in Syria. And this is what the president's talking about over the weekend. I mean, is this again the president talking about kind of stepping on his own good news?
Right, and this is a world leader he actually has a good relationship with right now.
That's exactly right.
And so you'd think that they would be highlighting that, and they probably will seek to do that today. But listen, the president has been preoccupied with this for as long as he's been president, this being the Mueller probe and this being his top advisors being in the crosshairs. So this is one of the reasons the president has trouble keeping lawyers and hiring lawyers, because he doesn't take their advice and he puts the spotlight back on him. So you're right. You'd think that they would be highlighting the relationship with France, but maybe it's a new week. Perhaps we'll start there.
Well, speaking of advice, Mark, advice coming from a unique place. Ivana Trump giving an interview to the New York Post. She had an interesting take on her husband's political future. She was asked about a second term, and she told the New York Post that, I'll tell you something, I don't think it's necessary. He has a good life, and he has everything. Donald is going to be 74, 73 for the next election, and maybe he should just go and play golf and enjoy his fortune.
If I was Donald Trump, I would do that, right? I mean, if I had his money and I had his life, guess what? I'm not sitting here talking to you, Kate, and I'm certainly not
Yes,
the
you
president
would.
of the United
Yes,
States.
you would. You
know
still
what's
would, even
interesting?
if you did have millions.
What's interesting about that comment, and I know we're short on time, is that he has been hearing that from folks who have been close to him. We even heard Howard Stern, when Donald Trump was running for president, said, why would Donald Trump do this? And to this day, we've even heard Howard Stern say over and over again, I still never understood why Donald Trump ran for president. He had such a good life, and we're hearing that from his ex-wife. And you know what? She's probably right.
His closest circle of advisors now, Michael Cohen, Howard Stern, and Ivana Trump. Great to see you guys. Thank you.